Hello to all Cinemaster lovers. Hope you enjoy watching. Let's get started. The story Malnazidos takes place during the Spanish Civil War. To test the latest development in biochemical weapons, a group of Nazi soldiers drove to a village where a wedding was being held. The originally happy atmosphere suddenly became tense. The newlyweds could never have imagined their wedding would soon become a funeral. An imperious Nazi officer stepped out of the car. He looked around with pride. When the groom saw this, he asked the boy to give the officer a glass of wedding wine. The officer also played along, but choked on the wine. This funny scene caused the villagers to laugh, but soon they would never laugh again. The officer was instantly furious. The officer had wanted to keep them alive for a few more seconds, but now he had to move forward with his plan. As the officer dropped his glass, he gave the order. In just under a minute, all the villagers present were killed. The lively wedding instantly turned into hell on earth, but it didn't end there. All the Nazi soldiers put on their gas masks and threw the biological weapons into the pile of corpses. As the blue gas covered the bodies, they would rise again. Not only that, but the Nazi officers used this horrible biological weapon on the battlefield. They used fighter planes to drop them on enemy camps. A German fighter was destroyed in one engagement, and the pilot landed in the jungle a short distance away. This scene was just seen by Jan, who was on a mission. Although they were not Spaniards, they were still on the same side. So Jan was ready to suspend the messenger mission and go to the crash site to rescue the pilot. Soon, he arrived at the crash site with his driver D. Cruz. In the wreckage of the fighter, Jan found some strange blue powder, but he did not care. Right now, saving people was the most important thing. They saw the pilot hanging from a tree not far from the crash site. His legs were blown off and he had no vital signs. At that moment, a small group with weapons suddenly appeared behind them. They were guerrillas from the opposing camp. Seeing that there were many people on the other side, they could only obediently surrender. The guerrilla leader asked them what they were doing here, but John tried to resist. But the next moment, he was subdued by Matakiris from the group. Matakiris wanted to kill him with a knife, but the captain stopped her because he wanted to know what the Nazis had sent them here for. They must have some important information on them. But after a search, only a letter was found in Jan's pocket. It was just a letter with some insignificant content. Faced with the captain's questioning, Jan was also confused, saying he was just a messenger and had no knowledge of the contents. The captain had no choice but to take them back to the camp before making plans. But just as they were about to leave, the war correspondent wanted to take a picture of the dead pilot. But the dead pilot came back to life. Before the reporter could react, he was pounced on the ground by the pilot and frantically bitten. The screams attracted the attention of the team. The brave Brodsky immediately grabbed the pilot and threw him out. At the same time, his hands were covered with a strange blue powder. But the next second, the pilot without legs crawled over again. Brodsky shot at the pilot, but he felt no pain. The hail of bullets also failed to stop his attack until the captain shot him in the head. Only then did the pilot stop attacking. He had been infected with the biochemical virus and turned into a bloodthirsty zombie. But the crowd did not know what was happening. Just when they were confused, the bitten journalist also underwent a mutation. As he lunged with his teeth bared, Brodsky grabbed him and snapped the zombie's neck. But this did not kill the zombie. The only way was to attack the head. At that moment, countless German fighter planes crossed the sky. The partisans sensed something was wrong and immediately got up and returned to the camp. But when they arrived, they found the camp was already in shambles. All the teammates in the camp were wiped out, which was obviously the work of the enemy aircraft just now. The blue powder was also found at the site. Matakiris wanted to check on his teammates, but he didn't expect them to open their eyes suddenly, like the pilots and journalists in the jungle. The dead teammates also mutated into zombies, but it wasn't over yet. Other teammates whom the bombing had killed got up one after another. They panicked. One team member saw his father among the zombies. He walked over without hesitation, despite Jan's obstruction. The result was predictable. Seeing this horrible scene, the others also realized that these people were no longer the same as their former comrades, so they turned their guns on them. But in all directions were zombies, and the people could only retreat to the river to take a small boat to leave. The captain again questioned Jan about what the Germans were planning, but Jan repeatedly said he did not know anything. Looking at his innocent look, the captain had to untie him. After all, in a situation like this where zombies are everywhere, only by working together can they improve their chances of survival. But soon after they went ashore, they were attacked by zombies again. The zombie virus had spread. De Cruz was so scared that he was frozen in place. To cover De Cruz's escape, Brodsky was bitten by a zombie on his calf. He grabbed the zombie and looked at him. him. It was a child, and suddenly his heart softened. This also allowed other zombies to have the opportunity to take advantage of this. The strongest man in the team ended up as a buffet for the zombies. The team was helpless and had no choice but to keep running for their lives. They walked until nightfall and finally came upon a house with lights on, but they didn't expect to find a German officer, a nun, and a sniper in this dilapidated house. As soon as they entered, the atmosphere became tense. If anyone made a wrong move, a fight could break out. Just then, De Cruz's gun accidentally went off, making everyone even more nervous, and the battle was about to start. At this critical moment, John stepped forward. He said the biggest enemy wasn't each other, but the hordes of zombies outside. Only by uniting could they hope to survive. The group realized this kid made sense, so they decided to turn their conflict into something positive, temporarily forming a doomsday escape squad. But how did the zombies appear? They still had no way of knowing. Late at night, Jan accidentally lit the secret letter, discovering the secret inside. He hadn't expected it to be a map, but before he could study it carefully, the zombies swarmed back. The dilapidated house couldn't withstand the zombie attack, so they had to escape through the back door. Before leaving, Mecha also remembered to throw a bomb into the house. As a real man, Mecha never looks back. Once they were safe, Jan took out the map. A spot was marked on it. He guessed there must be some hidden purpose there, so the group agreed to go and investigate. Soon they reached their destination. The point marked on the map was the village where the Germans had begun testing the virus. They entered a church, which the Germans had long ago converted into a biochemical laboratory. Various experimental instruments were covered in bloodstains. The scene was shocking. At that moment, a woman emerged from the dark room. She was the bride from the wedding, the only survivor in the village. Haunted by the German atrocities that day, the bride recounted what had happened. Meanwhile, De Cruz, who was working on his car outside, heard the commotion and hurried to finish his repairs. The people in the church were about to leave when the Commissario Politico blocked the door with a gun. The group was confused. It turned out he had found the research data on the biochemical virus and wanted to eliminate everyone except the guerrillas and take the information for himself. With this biochemical weapon, the guerrillas could win the war, but the captain disagreed. He knew the horror of the virus and aimed his gun at the Commissario Politico. Just then, De Cruz burst in, only to be taken hostage by the Commissario Politico. As he pushed De Cruz aside and prepared to leave alone, a horde of zombies suddenly pounced on him. The Commissario Politico was torn apart on the spot. The front door was filled with zombies, so the others had to escape through an underground passage. But on the way out, the bride suddenly mutated and attacked the German officer. The officer stomped her to the ground, and Matakiris took the opportunity to kill her with a shot. Then they opened a metal door and finally escaped outside. But the nun at the end of the line locked herself in. The captain, not knowing why, went to ask her and realized she had been bitten. To avoid endangering the others, the nun chose to buy time for them to escape. John then spotted a truck not far away through his binoculars and called De Cruz to check it out. Since the Nazis developed the biochemical virus, they must have an antidote and might be able to stop everything. It took a little while, but De Cruz brought the truck over. Without delay, they rushed toward the barracks, not noticing that De Cruz's arm was dripping blood. The next day, they arrived safely at the barracks, but the general only allowed Jan to enter. Jan didn't want to abandon the others. The general warned Jan that the biochemical virus experiment was complete, and they would soon clean up the entire test area. The whole valley would be raised in a few hours. But Jan was unmoved and turned to leave. After all, Jan was his nephew, and the general told the Nazi officer that the bombing had to be delayed. But the general was just a pawn, and the Nazi officer killed him outright. When the others learned of the bombing, they didn't intend to sit idly by. They were ready to blow up the barracks and go straight in. But who would carry out this difficult task? As everyone hesitated, De Cruz stepped forward and showed his bitten arm to the group. Instead of becoming a zombie, he'd rather die a real man. Everyone knew the consequences of being bitten and had to respect De Cruz's choice. As soon as he rushed to the barracks, the sentry knocked him down at the gate. They thought the mission had failed, but De Cruz became a zombie the next second and stood up again. He didn't forget his mission and continued toward the barracks under heavy gunfire. With cover from the sniper, De Cruz managed to reach the barracks entrance. Just as the mission was about to be completed, he was shot in the head by the other side. But at the last moment, De Cruz detonated the grenade in his hand. With an explosion, a gap was blown open in the gate, and the others took the opportunity to enter the camp. Jan looked back and saw that the hillside was packed with zombies converging on them. It seemed impossible to turn back now. They had to enter the cave and fight the Nazi soldiers head-on, as the zombies also poured into the cave. This ended the war between humans, and everyone unanimously. They turned their guns on the zombies, but there were so many that the last line of defense was soon breached. The entire camp became a zombie orgy. The Nazis also paid a heavy price for their actions. The survivors had to fight. The snipers were covering from high ground, but zombies were everywhere. The sniper was unfortunately dragged away by the zombies. The officer and Mecha are also trapped inside a vehicle. Zombies surround them, and they are in a desperate situation. They finally choose to ignite the bomb and die with the zombies. The remaining three are ready to split up. The captain starts the train, and Jan and the others go to find the antidote. They break into a train car laboratory and run into the Nazi officer, who has just finished injecting the zombie virus. John asks him if he has an antidote, but the Nazi officer says there is no antidote. Their purpose is to strengthen the soldiers' combat ability. Seeing that the Nazi officer was about to mutate, Matakiris killed him with a single shot. Although the culprit was eliminated, the sound of gunfire also attracted the zombies. John wanted to see if there was another exit, but a zombie was tied up inside. He was inattentive and got bitten on the palm of his hand. Matakiris first took care of the zombie, then picked up a 40-centimeter knife and rushed towards John, cutting off John's bitten arm with the knife. Although not tried before, this method should work. Matakiris had just bandaged John's wounds when the zombies broke in. They had no choice but to hide in a laboratory chamber. At the same time, the captain started the train. The zombies also swarmed after him. After he shot a few zombies, he chose to commit suicide. The fighter jets that received the bombing mission arrived immediately, and the train rushed out of the cave amid an explosion. The train was only minimally affected. The sniper survived. They had the protection of the experimental chamber and managed to survive. But at the movie's end, they don't get to be together because the war will continue and they're on different sides. They will not have a future together. Under John's unwilling gaze, Matakiris leaves in style. But on the other side of the train, the Nazi officer did not die. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell to get more new videos. See you next time.